In the future, humans have been genetically engineered to stop aging at 25. However, the catch is that once a person turns 25, they only have 1 year left to live. A person's remaining life is displayed on their forearm by a timer, and now time has become the world's currency. The wealthy can live forever, while the poor live day to day, paycheck to paycheck, literally. Will wakes up one day to find he has less than 24 hours left. He goes downstairs and greets his mother, Rachel, who is celebrating her 50th birthday. Their celebration is cut short when they start discussing their finances. Rachel mentions she only has 3 days left and reminds Will of the bills and loans they still need to pay. Will reassures her that he'll find a way to get the money. Rachel tells him she'll be away for 2 days working, planning to pay a loan. She asks Will to meet her at the bus station to give her more time when she returns. Before leaving, she gives Will 30 minutes so he can afford a decent meal. Will kisses her goodbye and heads to work. On his way, Will encounters a little girl, Maya, who asks for a minute. Will generously gives her 5 minutes and sends her off smiling. At work, he meets his friend Borel. Will works at a factory producing time storage devices. After a long day, Will clocks out and collects his payment, only to find it's less than expected. He confronts the distributor, who tells him the quota has increased, and Will didn't meet it. Later, Will goes to a bar where some men invite him to gamble, but he declines. Before leaving, he reminds one of the men that he owes him an hour. Will collects the hour and joins Burrell, who is drunk and points out a man buying drinks for everyone. Burrell says the man, Henry, has over a century on his clock. Will notices someone watching Henry and warns him that he's attracting too much attention. He advises Henry to leave, but the man refuses. Soon after, a group of men enters the bar, causing everyone to rush out. Burrell informs Will that these men are Minutemen, gangsters who steal time and extort others. Burrell tries to pull Will away, but Will decides to stay and observe. The leader, Fortis, approaches Henry, demanding his time but offering him a chance to fight for it. Henry, looking sick, heads to the bathroom, where a Minuteman follows. Will seizes the moment, bursts in, knocks out the guard, and escapes with Henry. The two flee, with Fortis and his gang chasing them. They barely manage to escape, hiding in an abandoned building. The Minutemen nearly catch them, but one recognizes Will and tells Fortis, so they abandon the chase. Will and Henry get to know each other, and Henry reveals he's 105 years old. He explains that his mind is tired, and he longs for death, which is why he's so reckless. Will becomes angry, frustrated that he and his mother have to work hard every day just to survive. Henry reveals the cruel reality of their world. The rich raise the cost of living to keep the poor dying, funneling more time to the wealthy. In truth, there is more than enough time for everyone, but greed and the desire for immortality blind the rich. Henry asks Will what he would do with all the time Henry has, and Will replies that he would never waste it like Henry has. After some thought, Henry gives all but 5 minutes of his time to Will as he sleeps. When Will wakes up, he realizes he now has over a century on his clock. He searches for Henry and finds him sitting on a bridge. Henry's time runs out, and he smiles as he falls into the river below. Later, Will goes to Burrell's home, where he meets Burrell's wife, Greta, holding their newborn baby. Will reveals his newfound fortune to Burrell and talks about what happened the previous night. When Burrell asks what he plans to do next, Will says he's going to seek justice. Before leaving, Will gives Burrell a generous amount of time. Meanwhile, Rachel pays off a loan but finds that she doesn't have enough time to afford a bus ride as the fare has increased. Desperate, she pleads with the driver and passengers, but no one helps. With no other option, Rachel starts running. Will and Rachel are now racing against time, but every second counts. Tragically, they reach each other just as Rachel's time runs out, and she dies in Will's arms. Will breaks down, devastated that they were only seconds away from escaping their desperate situation. Now, Will has more time than he ever dreamed of, but his mother is gone. The next day, Timekeepers recover Henry's body from the river. Senior timekeeper Raymond and his partner Jaeger begin investigating. Meanwhile, Will dons a new suit and look, leaving the poor time zone to enter New Greenwich, where the elite live. He crosses several borders, each toll becoming more expensive, with the final one costing him a full year. When the driver asks Will his purpose for visiting New Greenwich, Will replies that he's there to make the rich pay. The city is completely different from anything Will has ever known. As he steps out of the car, he starts running out of habit, still conditioned by a life of scarcity. But when he checks his clock, he reminds himself to slow down and live like someone with all the time in the world. This catches the eye of Sylvia, a wealthy young woman. Will checks into a luxury hotel, waking up with 105 years still on his clock. Though he enjoys the comfort and luxury, the memory of his mother's death continues to haunt him. For the first time, he experiences fine dining and tips the waitress a week's worth of time. The waitress notices his urgency and remarks that he seems to do everything a little too fast. Will quips back that he takes his time with things that really matter. Planning to enter a casino, Will first upgrades his wardrobe. Meanwhile, at the timekeeper headquarters, Jaeger reports that a man crossed multiple borders into New Greenwich. Raymond recognizes Will and recalls his father. Will then enters a high-stakes poker game where Philippe, a billionaire with centuries of time, takes an interest in him. Will's poker winnings after several rounds have grown to over 2 centuries. Philippe ups the ante by adding 50 years to the pot. Nonetheless, Will calls without hesitation, and the river card reveals the 6 of diamonds. Will's attention shifts from the game to the enchanting Sylvia, seated beside Philippe. Philippe rolls up his sleeves, showing almost 10,000 years of time on his clock. He begins talking about the vast divide between the wealthy and the impoverished, defending it as part of natural selection. He raises the stakes by another 2 centuries. Will takes the bait and calls, leaving him with just 30 seconds of time on his arm. The game ends in Will's favor, and he wins a millennium. This event brings excitement to Philippe's otherwise mundane existence. Philippe notices Will's interest in Sylvia and questions whether he thinks she's his grandmother, mother, or wife. Will calmly replies that she's simply beautiful. Philippe introduces Sylvia as his daughter, and she extends an invitation to a party. The next day, Will buys a brand new car with his winnings and drives it to Philippe's mansion. At the mansion, he's introduced to 3 generations of women who appear to be sisters. Among the high-class guests, Will seems out of place. Sylvia approaches, rescuing him from spending the evening alone. As they talk, their conversation eventually leads them to the dance floor. She inquires if he's from the ghetto, but Will neither confirms nor denies it. Sylvia confides in him about her empty life, and how the endless time she possesses feels more like a prison than a blessing. Meanwhile, Philippe and his wife watch them closely, prompting Will to take Sylvia outside to the beach. They undress and dive into the ocean, floating naked under the moonlight, just inches apart. Sylvia briefly pulls away, but the waves draw her closer again. Suddenly, a voice calls out from the shore, interrupting the moment. They return, and Philippe invites Will to join him for another round of poker. However, before they can begin, the timekeepers burst in, confronting Will. They take him into custody, and Raymond, the lead timekeeper, introduces himself. He questions Will about why he's in New Greenwich and how he came into possession of over a millennium of time. Will answers truthfully, explaining that Henry gave him the time before committing suicide. Raymond doesn't believe his story, seizes Will's time, and arrests him. As Raymond leaves, Will questions why suicides in the wealthy zones get so much attention while murders in the ghetto go unnoticed. Raymond is taken aback by this, as it reminds him of Will's father. Will seizes the moment to overpower the guards and takes Sylvia hostage. They escape through the kitchen and drive off in Will's car. A high-speed chase ensues, and Raymond's car crashes into Will's, causing him to lose control. Will skillfully drives in reverse, narrowly avoiding a head-on collision with a truck. They manage to evade the timekeepers and take refuge under a bridge. Will asks Sylvia for some of her time, but she refuses. The next morning, they hit the road again, but run over a set of traffic spikes. Their car crashes, and Fortis and his men soon arrive. Fortis drains time from Sylvia, but leaves her with only 30 minutes before fleeing. Will gives her a few of his remaining minutes, and they run to find more time. With just 3 minutes left, Will knocks on Burrell's door. Burrell's wife, Greta, answers and tells Will that Burrell has died of alcohol poisoning. Sylvia panics as her time is running out. Will notices her earrings, and they rush to sell them to a jewelry dealer. Desperate, they accept an offer of only 2 days' worth of time in exchange. They quickly hide as the timekeeper's sirens approach. Walking through the city, they discuss Sylvia's family business. Will asks how much her family is worth, and she says it's so much that the exact amount doesn't even matter. Will calls Raymond, demanding Philippe transfer 1,000 years to the ghetto in exchange for Sylvia. Raymond warns Will that this path will only lead to his death, just like his father. Will counters that his father died fighting, but Raymond reveals he was doing something even more dangerous. As night falls, Sylvia makes herself at home in Will's apartment. She asks about his family, and Will opens up about his mother's death. He reminisces about his father, who, like him, was a gambler, but played with time instead of money. Though his father often won, his acts of generosity ultimately led to his death. They realize they're about the same age, and their bond deepens as they share more of their pasts. The next morning, Will checks if Philippe honored the deal, but no time transfers have been made, leaving Sylvia disillusioned. Even without receiving the time, Will intends to let Sylvia go. He takes her to a phone booth, handing her a gun as a parting gift, and she kisses him in return. She calls her father and angrily confronts him for not fulfilling Will's demand. During the call, Raymond appears and holds Will at gunpoint. Sylvia turns around and without hesitation shoots Raymond. Though Will points his gun at the wounded timekeeper, he chooses to give Raymond some of his time instead, and they drive off together in Raymond's car. Later, parked on the side of the road, Sylvia asks about Will's plans. In the timekeeper's car, they play the role, pulling over a driver. Sylvia gets too comfortable with the gun, firing a shot that startles Will and the driver. They rob the passenger and drive off in the stolen car. That evening, they sit in the back seat, watching the news about their exploits. Will tells Sylvia she can still go back to her father, but she refuses, preferring this new life over her dull existence. Will leans in for a kiss, now with enough time to enjoy more than just that. Meanwhile, in his office, Philippe meets with his partners, assuring them he didn't pay the ransom. They question his ability to resolve the situation, but before he can explain, Raymond enters. Raymond informs Philippe that Sylvia no longer wants to be rescued. Philippe apologizes and blames his daughter's stubbornness on Stockholm Syndrome. Raymond remains firm and tells him he intends to arrest his daughter. Philippe tries to bribe him with his own time, but Raymond stays uninterested and walks away. The next day, Will teaches Sylvia how to properly handle a gun. They discuss Will's plan to distribute time to the people, and Sylvia says she can help him obtain the time they need. At a local loan office, a truck suddenly crashes through the front windows. The two execute a heist, grabbing as many time capsules as possible. They encourage the borrowers to take as much time as they want, and a crowd rushes in. Later, Will distributes time to Greta, Maya, and even the timeline distributor, who provides time as charity. Fortis continues to terrorize and kill people to steal their time. He then notices a reward offering 10 years for the capture of Will and Sylvia. Meanwhile, Philippe watches the news about his daughter's ongoing efforts to rob him. That night, Raymond and the timekeepers surround a motel where Will and Sylvia are staying. Realizing they are surrounded, the two leap out of a window to escape. Raymond chases them through the streets and narrow alleys. They eventually climb onto rooftops, where a shootout ensues. They manage to jump onto a bus and lose Raymond. Fortis continues his hunt for Will and Sylvia. He interrogates a group, threatening to steal their time. When one person dies, another steps up and offers information about their whereabouts. Back at the motel, Will and Sylvia sit together on the couch, talking about the dangers they face. They acknowledge that if they're caught, it will mean their death. Through their time together and every close call, Sylvia has never felt more alive. Suddenly, Fortis and his men burst through the door. Generously, Fortis gives Will a chance to fight for his life. Fortis rolls up his sleeve for a game of strong-arm, and Will accepts the challenge. Will struggles until his final seconds, then turns the tide when Fortis loses focus. Fortis's men move in, their fear visible. Will seizes a gun from his ankle and takes out everyone, draining Fortis dry. Will and Sylvia stand on a rooftop, watching prices continue to rise. Will feels defeated, saying the rich will keep increasing the cost of living every time they steal more time. He says only 1,000,000 years will make a real difference. Sylvia agrees, but hints she has a plan. The next day, Philippe enters a building with a group of bodyguards. Sylvia distracts them by calling out to her father. Among the guards is Will, who points a gun at Philippe's head. He orders the guards to drop their weapons, and they take Philippe hostage. In his office is a time vault containing a device with 1,000,000 years stored. Philippe warns that society will collapse if that much time falls into the wrong hands. He argues that someone will always sacrifice others in pursuit of immortality. Will, filled with anger, points his gun at Philippe, but regains his composure. Will tells him that immortality isn't worth the life of even one person. The two then make their escape. Meanwhile, police vehicles block off the main road. Timekeepers fire at Will and Sylvia's car, but they miraculously make it through unscathed, crashing through a toll booth to cross the border. Raymond refuses to give up and pursues them. They reach the ghetto, but as they near safety, Raymond intercepts them, crashing into their car. Will emerges unharmed and asks Maya to distribute the 1,000,000 years. Raymond points a gun at them, but the crowd swarms, blocking his view and allowing them to escape. Raymond hijacks another car, continuing the chase. Finally, they face off in the middle of the road. Raymond admits that he too came from the ghetto, and after climbing out of poverty, learned the harsh truth that the divide between the rich and poor must be maintained. As they talk, Raymond realizes his time has run out. He dies on the spot, and Will and Sylvia desperately search for a way to replenish their own time. They spot Raymond's car in the distance and sprint toward it with seconds left on their clocks. Will reaches it first and takes the time, then rushes to Sylvia just as her time is about to expire. They embrace just in time to survive for another day. Now, citizens begin crossing into the wealthier zones. The Minutemen look on as their societal hierarchy starts to crumble. Will and Sylvia continue their mission, now heading toward a massive time bank.